Greetings, Small Gardens here reporting in for this Sunday day. And today we are going to have a rather intensive discussion. I feel like I've been off key for a lot of my discussions, so we're gonna make it count for this Sunday. Today we're talking about First Corinthians chapter 6, verses 12 through 20, and First Corinthians chapter 7, verses 1 through 40. The reason when I put those together is because one talks about sexual immorality and another one talks about marriage. I feel like those go hand in hand because it seems like outside of marriage, sexual immorality is very easy to point. But all of a sudden, once you're married, sexual immorality no longer applies. But I feel like it's double. It becomes double so because of how marriage has taken form in a modern time. So, without further ado, we're going to start working on this. Let's begin with sexual immorality. Talk about sexual immorality in the sense that we're talking about a person using their body for pleasure, which is looked down upon in most religions. What you call it is because pleasure is basically like choosing the flesh over God, which I can't argue because I don't believe in a God. However, since we're talking about a religious perspective, we'll expect this in terms of what this applies to today. Now, and out of respect for whoever, for all Christian sects and Catholics, since they read the same Bible, technically. We'll basically say that if you feel like pleasure is a problem, then that's your prerogative. However, for those who are slightly more towards the opinion that pleasure is conditional, we'll work with that and basically say that sexual immorality is not dictated by pleasure. It's more dictated by an equation, and this equation is calculated by your contributions to a female's feelings, and then what a female is feeling, and then whatever you get from putting those two together will determine if the equation is balanced or not balanced. And the reason why that's a good summarization is because if you are putting action into making sure that the female is comfortable at all times, then you can make sure that she also has good feelings, which will result from her being comfortable. And if she's comfortable, then you don't have to worry about sexual immorality, because the idea is that she doesn't. That's where the problem arises. Most people are worried about proving yourself to a female to make sure that she feels like you're not disrespecting her. It's not about that. It's the simplest process that you go through in life normally. You go through hoops. You don't ask why you go through the hoops. You just go through the hoops and hope that you went through the hoops correctly. And if you went through the hoops correctly, you get to where you're going. And if you don't, well, you probably was looking backwards at some point. Now, applying that to a female, that's how it works. If you are you have to go through the female's hoops and not ask questions and not have doubts and not have yada yada yada, because it's going to mess up the whole process. And that's the purity behind it. The idea that you have to keep your mind focused as a male on doing what the female is dictating to you, so that you don't have to ask, why am I doing this? And if you can do this, then you don't have to worry about your relationship being sexually immoral, because now the process is moving your brain off of focusing on your female as a sex object and moving it more towards a goal, a purpose, which leads back into sexual immorality technically. But since you went through a process, that counter argument is going, because the argument is that sexual immorality is based off of a male focusing on their pleasure at a female's expense, and yeah. And the reason why it works that way is because females are never going to be orchestrated towards pleasure. That's just it's a hardware thing. They're hardwired to be focused more on the what I talked about before, aesthetics and stuff, on their own focus and pursuits. And because they're focused on their own focus and pursuits, they are focused on their pursuits. We can't say that nobody can say that a female is essentially off course or sexually immoral, because chances are she's not even going to be focused on her own sexuality anyway. So going back to the male, if females are not going to be focused on their own sexual morality, well, not sexual morality, their own sexual pursuits, likewise, well, counterwise, something like that, males are, which is very true. So this is how the immorality begins. A male is is basically uses his position to put a female in a position where she becomes an object for pleasure, and that's how the immorality happens, because he's basically taking away not her feelings, her position in the situation, by basically saying, you know, I don't really care about you. I'm just trying to get to what I need to get to, and that's essentially how we get into this position. However, this can be just as apparent in a marriage. Actually, it's more double so, because in a marriage, that's how society has stereotyped this. Now you get married, you can do whatever you want, and yada yada yada, and it's never that simple. Because marriage means things get even more complicated, because you're getting married for a reason. And the reason is that you are trying to create a family. That was the whole purpose of marriage, to create families. So the idea is that you create a family, you can't have your wife can't be that person anymore. You can't have a relationship focused on pleasure, because now that you have children in the house, you have to focus on being their role models, making sure that they grow up as mentally, spiritually, physically nourished as possible. And by having a relationship that's sexually disruptive, then your children become disrupted by this, and yada yada yada. Now, all in all, this may not be a terrible thing, because children must learn this stuff eventually. The problem is, it's the morality behind it. The idea that you are impressioning into your son to look at women as just a into a goal to an end, and you're impressing into females that basically this is how all males think, which is probably true, but it's better to let your females go out into the world and figure that out on their own. Just like it's better for your males to go out into the world and figure that out on their own, instead of using their parents as a reason to say the world is a terrible place. And that's how sexual immorality corrupts children. Now, going back to the verse, they talked about marriage as a answer to a improperly directed relationship, and I'm like, that's a terrible idea. This is how the problem starts. When you take that when you say that having a when you say that you can carry, like I just said, you can't carry over a relationship that is focused on pleasure into marriage, because like I said, marriage by definition, if your relationship is focused on pleasure, then marriage is counterproductive to that, because you don't need to harp on commitment if your relationship is focused on pleasure, because by definition the pleasure is the commitment. Um so when you marry for this reason, because you have a relationship focused on pleasure, you can see how marriages get very slanted very quickly, because the female eventually burns out. It's going to happen. It's not a stereotype. It's not a generalization. It's going to happen. Every female burns out. So when that female burns out, now she's ready to adopt a familiar role. Then now the male naturally is going to always be a infinite source of this desire, this pursuit. So now the female is going to encourage the female to be reactive to the male, which is going to turn force the male to be reactive to a female. Now you can see how a lot of relationships get divorced or get into difficulties or worse. Now she's pregnant, she didn't even know she was pregnant, yada yada yada. You got kids, now they gotta deal with mommy and daddy fighting and stuff. So whatever, over some dumb stuff. But if I'm going too fast, I apologize. I'm just trying to show that I'm not it's a professionalism thing I'm trying to get right now, because I'm not I feel like I was kind of sort of burning time, but not really, because I was still talking about stuff, but I was like, I wasn't really on my game. Um, what else? They talked about um. I think a very important thing that they talk about also is the difference between a married and an unmarried man. And um, sorry for the delay. It's a long verse, so most of this stuff is filler anyway, in terms of explanations about stuff that was already talked about and yada yada yada. So I feel like the unmarried man versus the married man is a big juxtaposition, because the unmarried man can find himself more morally bound than the married man, because the married man has the commitment to always fall back on. And I feel like that's another problem with marriages, because at times you can let the societal hype get into your marriage, which is basically saying that, we married now, so there's no more expectations, the commitment is there, and yada yada yada. And now you see how this stuff, this is how the marriages turn into pettiness, because you take the position, somebody decides to take the position as leverage versus basically playing a role. And this is it just encourages bad behavior, because you know once somebody decides in a relationship to start lying to the next person, it's already over, man. The reason why I say this is because we're not going to entertain the idea that cheating is rampant. But when you lie to your spouse or you lie to your husband, that's like cheating, because you're creating problems on purpose. And the reason why it's like cheating is because when you purposely do stuff to threaten the marriage, then it's like, you know what I mean? It's very we go from sexual immorality to just immorality. It's just an immoral thing to do, to take someone's trust and to use commitment to leverage their trust and basically make them feel like they're talking to a stranger, which is the worst feeling in the world. If you ever had that feeling before, when you with a female or you with a male and you felt like you with somebody who was against you, that's worse than feeling. That's worse than sleeping with your house door open. That's worse than I don't even know how to explain it. It's like sleeping. It's like if you had a big ass window in your bedroom and you slept with that open. That's how that would feel. Um, but you know, the reason why an unmarried man is always going to have the easier life morally, because he doesn't have the obligation to a female. A male who's married is always going to have that the easy life in terms of basically being I don't know how to put this. One is going to be immoral. One is going to, oh yeah, there we go. Is always going to have the easy life dealing with his woman, because he only has to deal with one woman. So, I guess you could call that sexually, but not really, because I don't know. But the idea behind it is that if I'm not married, then I don't really have to worry about myself losing character. However, I will have to worry about my relationships with women. Now, if I am married, I don't have to worry about my relationship with a woman. I have to worry about myself becoming a morally corrupt person, because, as we know, it can be very easy to brush things under the carpet, especially if you've already decided that this is your commitment, or nobody's going anywhere. You know what I mean? That's like the typical argument that people use when they decide to become immoral. The idea that their spouse, they can basically do whatever they want because the spouse can't do anything about it anyway. And even if it is true, why would you do that? Why would you wait until you have the leverage to do this? I mean, that's just terrible. And excuse the sarcasm, but I'm like, it's the pettiness. Going right back to the pettiness. Don't be petty. If pettiness was a sin, I feel like that would fix a lot of problems. But moving onwards, now I have to move away from the Bible, because I feel like I'm more or less arguing what they're talking about versus keeping things relevant to the real life. In terms of I feel like the big marriage problem is the females who claim to be virgins. The reasons why I say that is because you will always be a question mark in any male's mind if you swear to God that you've never had sex before. And I say that is because that's just like women. That's like if you say you took a vow of celibacy, but you're not a monk or a nun. I don't get your logic, and you want to get married. I don't get your logic, because it's not you're not making a vow if you intend to break it eventually. And if you intend to break it eventually, then you probably have already broken it anyway. So I feel like these women are the question marks of society, because you're basically telling somebody to walk into a relationship that's not trustworthy. I don't want to. I don't think any male would want to deal with a female who's who says that they prefer to wait till marriage to do anything, to have done anything. But we'll make that distinction because I just talked about females who said that I don't get their logic. They talk about, I do get their logic. I just explained their logic the other day. Something about remaining celibate in a relationship or something like that. Something like that. I didn't really delve too deep into it, but I'll break it down. Um, if you're a woman, you've never been intimate with a male before, right? And your logic is that is the reason is for marriage. Your character is already thrown away because you're like saying you're one of those people who's never thought a bad thought, or you're saying you're one of those people that's never lied to anybody, or you're saying you're one of those people who um who never um who never did anything wrong, and your logic is already terribly excuse my disrespect. The reason why I say skewed is because your logic paints intimacy as a sin, which may be part of certain religions. However, realistically speaking, if you're talking about a relationship in which you want a male to trust you for the rest of his life, why would he trust a woman who can't even rationalize a simple thing as pleasure? And that's just the problem with that. For males who also participate in this, you are twice as you are twice the danger to a relationship because you are going to be susceptible to that corruption after you've spent so much time essentially breaking your brain because every you I can tell you, I don't think a male is not going to tell you that the desire to be with a female is an everyday struggle. So, for you to say that you wish to play this Virgin Mary role, you are not. You're moving. It's that idea to you're moving towards an idea that's impossible. There will never be a perfectly sexual moral person, and the reason is because the moment you say that you want to break your vow, you've already broken it. And if you've decided that you will take a vow, then we'll never know. So that's why I say there is no perfectly sexual moral person because you need to have the experience to figure out where you stand. And if you lie to yourself and say that you took a vow and then you choose to break it, then you're already proving yourself a liar. So either way, you're not a moral person because if you do take a vow and you never break it, then we can never put into question your morality because you've never been tested. It's like saying if I got rich, I would never spend it on anything bad. But you've never been rich, so how will we know if you would spend it on something bad? So relating this back to marriage at times can encourage sexual immorality because also we gonna harp on females today. Females have a tendency of using marriage to leverage husbands to basically bend to their will. And that shit's wrong because there are females who don't do this and then get cheated on and lied to, and yada 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 for things that they don't do. Like, you would think that's a female that will purposely say to you that you're no longer my partner in pleasure, purposely, because you anger her. Shit, it's like, why would you do that? Why would you do that? If you was a female and you always treated your husband correctly and your husband decides to just cheat on you, how would you feel about that? You would probably be pissed. You would probably feel an emotion that is similar to anger. So, you got females who decide to nitpick. I'm like, come on, yeah. You can get your point across, you can make your voice heard, but don't leverage the marriage against somebody. Just like you would expect your husband not to cheat on you, your husband expects you not to extort him, which is what you're doing. And the reason why this all ties together is because we tend to always think of things boxed in, right? So when you think about sexual immorality, is it inside or outside? Probably outside the box, right? Because the box is made of marriage. So it's outside the box. So we can't even fathom on a normal basis how sexual immorality can creep into a marriage. Likewise, we can't understand how marriage can creep into sexual immorality. And the reason I say that is because if we're focusing on two married people, we got to take a step back. If you've decided that you want to already, that's another flaw that happens too. When you've decided to turn your relationship with a person you've not committed to or to be into a marriage, that's another problem that people make, because if I haven't even known you long enough to to feel like you can call these type of shots, I'm like, what are you talking about? Any male has that position, has that right to make that position, to basically tell a female, hey, listen, you're basically using a relationship against me, and we're not even married yet. We're supposed to be working on marriage, and you're basically saying, since I've stayed longer than a typical person, now I have to go through boot camp or something like that. What is this? Likewise, males do tend to trifle on females by taking their desire for commitment to basically use them. And we're not talking about for sexual pleasure, because we've already established that sexual pleasure is so obvious that you can't say you couldn't see it. To basically use females to basically basically take advantage of them, which it can happen in multiple ways. They can use you to for your assets. They can use you for your funds. They can basically take advantage of the fact that they know that you like them enough to commit to them and go and just go crazy with it. So that's how marriage is creeping into sexual immorality, is because when you have females and males who decide that I'll use the leverage that you get from commitment to basically make this person do what I want them to do. That's immoral. You're basic like people like I can understand how you could get lost with this, because when you think about sexual immorality, everything focuses around pleasure. But in reality, sexuality, gender, we call gender sex, right? So essentially, on a grand scale, sexual immorality revolves around the manipulation of a gender relationship. and however it manifests itself. So these are just things to think about, because monogamy is the most powerful force in the 21st century. And I say that because it extends across any race, any place on the map, any time zone, any any line you could use to draw people. Monogamy will always be there to keep things together. So when you're talking about a culture in which monogamy is looked up to, you have to be wary of these things. You have to be wary of sexual immorality. You have to be wary of marriage, both the pros and the cons, because most too much people will always be focused on the pros of marriage versus the cons of marriage, and that's just a fact of life. Now, what that does, it doesn't mean that the basis of this discussion is that sexual manipulation is focused around pleasure. The basis of this argument is that sexual manipulation is based around treatment. How do you treat your partner? And if you can't answer that question, you need to go handle that. Because to be honest with you, as much as they say that a baby is a gift, the real gift is the relationship. And the reason why it's a gift is because, by definition, you have two people, a male and a female, or a male and a male, or a female and a female. However you choose to pursue your marriage, you have these people who are both willing to give each other time, their time. There is no, I got this female that want to marry me. I'm gonna think about it. I'm gonna send her what you call it one day. It's not like that, because it may the pros of marriage may make you think it's that simple, but once you realize what you have to deal with a person, then you understand why this is a volunteer system. Because if I volunteer for something, I reserve the right to take it back. Females will probably already agree with me on this. So this isn't a warning or something like that to get more holified. It's not about holified. The general, the most important rule in any religious text is the golden rule. How you treat somebody expects how you want to be treated. So if you want to be petty, I see your point. If your relationship is built on pettiness, then let it be. Let it be. But I feel like you shouldn't encourage somebody else. You should never encourage somebody to be petty. Whether you talking to a friend, a family member, whatever, because pettiness is the easiest way to dissolve a relationship. It will dissolve it, and faster than a wrecking ball can knock a building down. Faster than gravity. Faster than faster than anything, really. So you should always try to be if you can't get holified in your mind and become the perfect person, then at least be forward about who you are. That's the next best thing. That's what you call a realistic negotiation. Because if you put it forth on the beginning about who I'm dealing with, then I can't argue with you. So, in order to keep things going, let's talk about what happens if is it a decision? Can it be a decision to not get married? That question probably depends. I feel like if you made this decision, you have to have been married at least one time. And if you've been married at least one time, then I can't argue with you. However, I feel like marriage, the whole marriage process is so inflated that I can't say that marriage is dictated. No, a relationship is dictated by marriage. Marriage is dictated by relationship because you can be with a person long enough to be equivalent to marriage anyway. So there's my that's how I fit into that one. So, you know, if a person feels like they don't want to get married, you ain't gotta argue with them. More importantly, if a female feels like, which is probably where it's gonna be most apparent at, if a female feels like she don't want to be bothered, then you can't really hold it against her. At the same time, males are probably gonna be more. This is probably gonna be easier for a male, but we gotta look at the motivations here. I feel like when you see what people go through in their marriages or in their relationships, it can make you not want to be married or in a relationship. Or if you even go through what you think about, what you went through in yours, it can make you not want to get married. And I feel like people who are already married have a tendency to pressure those who aren't married because that's just the immorality of their relationship. When you can always tell people who don't treat each other well because it ends up going outward into other people. So I guess if you wanted to learn who you are, get married. I'm not sure about that. Then again, it is the greatest test of who you are to marry somebody and then to always be able to have situations where you basically reflect back onto other people how you treat your wife or how you treat your husband. So, that's a plus of marriage. Or it can be a negative. Who knows? Um Marriage and kids. Now you don't necessarily have to have a kid with your wife to start a family. You can adopt or whatever. But you know, that's just a personal decision between you and your wife because females will always have that desire to have a maternal bond with their child. So that can only happen if the child pops out of the stomach. So yeah, that's how that works out. Um if mm, mm, mm. if the child does not pop out of the stomach, there will always be that distance, which can transfer over to the basically to the marriage, really, because the idea is that if you don't have a child of your own that you created, that I feel like that gets used as an excuse to basically bring immorality into your marriage, because the idea is that female throws a hissy fit, the male capitulates, and now we got a kid that got to grow up with estranged parents. So I don't know. And I feel like that's just another problem with marriage, that when you've painted marriage in such a vivid picture that people don't want to take away details and make their own, that can bring more immorality into the marriage, because like I said, females like to focus on things. They don't think about things, they focus on things. So if a female's already created in her mind how she wants her marriage to be, and you do not cooperate with this image, she will be the source of your immorality, your sexual immorality. How you deal with this is up to you, but it seems always that sexual immorality is always connected to the roots, the foundations of any marriage, and I feel like that's the true evil, the original sin of any marriage. The idea that somebody, whether it's the spouse, whether it's the husband or the wife, somebody's gonna be getting taken advantage of sooner or later, and that's how marriages turn from arguments to divorces. The fact that source problem can't get fixed, and it's a sad fact of reality, but it is, and you know that can breed into women the idea that they can essentially use their leverage to bully in any relationship they enter. And I feel like that's just a bad habit that they pick up. However, I can't say that males are angels in this situation, because where females bully, males deceive. Which is funny because it should be the other way around, but it's not. And how males deceive is that you basically allow the females to have a way and be the bully and be the huff and a puff and a yada yada yada. And then when she not paying attention, you do your own thing. So, that's how that ends up working out. And you can't blame them. I mean, that's how the immorality spreads. Because it's so fundamentally connected to the marriage. The idea is that if the female don't get her way, the marriage collapses. So you let the female get away, and then you do your thing, and then what? Boom. Now the marriage is it's not working on both sides now, and it works out, provided that the chaos ensues, right? The female continues bullying, and then she notices that the male isn't bothered, and now she's getting pissed because she understands why the male isn't bothered, and boom. And you can't blame the male for that, because 9 times out of 10, if a male tries to correct a female threatening a marriage, it's just gonna fail and the marriage is gonna collapse. Now, this isn't a marriage counselor session. This isn't marital advice, nor is this a what you would call a guidance thing. This is basically pointing at all the ugly things that sits in a marriage. Now, if I may be off, That's most likely possible because there are probably other things that come up in a marriage that I haven't talked about, but there's no way for me to talk about them because I probably haven't dealt with them. Now, for the things I can talk about, even still, reality says that you shouldn't let the marriage make you. And how you let the marriage make you is what I was just talking about before. The idea that you've created in your head this marriage idea, and since it's not working out, now you want to essentially abort the idea. And I feel like abortion is just another destroyer of marriages because I understand that you're a woman and you want a choice, but when you treat choices, when you treat decisions, right? When you treat decisions like video game logic, your position as a woman gets terribly degraded. There is no have a baby when I'm ready. You have a baby. You can't say that because I'm not comfortable having a child right now. I'm gonna have one. And I hope that nobody has this problem. Because abortion is a very serious thing. Truthfully, I wouldn't blame any male if they left their wife for having an abortion. Or if you left your husband because he suggested getting an abortion. Because that's also equally as crazy. Frankly, aborting is a terrible immorality. Aborting suggests that a female can decide over life and death. And if you can decide over life and death, does it not make you God? And for people that's non-religious like myself, what that means to us is that if you feel like money can buy somebody's life, then you be subject to the same terms. No, that's not a life threat. Nor is that a insinuation. I'm using the logic that you're using when you make actions that you don't completely understand. Because I know that you don't rationalize. And the rationalization that I'm making that you're missing is that abortions put prices on lives, and you just put a price on your kid's life. So, if you are becoming an endorser of paid murder, why shouldn't you be subject to the same logic? More importantly, aborting something is probably the greatest disrespect you can do. Because you can abort more than a baby. You can abort a marriage, which a lot of females do. So it's just a terrible precedent all in all because you abort a baby, you abort a marriage. You abort. You're basically like a quitter. It's like being a quitter, a habitual quitter. Which is embarrassing because this is usually a male problem. Males typically have the tendency to quit things whenever it's convenient for them. So to see a female do it becomes rather embarrassing because Now a male gets to sit back and be like, wow, that's that's how I look. And to be honest, I shouldn't be critiquing, but I have to critique on this because this is where the logic is leading me. The logic has led me to be a hypocrite right now because I'm not even supposed to be critiquing anybody, and yet I'm critiquing you right now. So for any females who have aborted marriages or aborted babies or aborted anything because it was convenient for them, then yes, you are the black sheep in the room. Now, what that means though is that sexual immorality is a lot deeper than you've probably given thought to ever in your life. Also means that if you have been giving thought to it in your life and it hasn't been a problem to you in your life, you should consider if it is a problem. And if it's not a problem, then good job. And if it is a problem, then you got something to do. And if you don't listen to whatever the hell I'm talking about, then that works too. Well, I'm gonna leave it at that because I feel like that's a good moot point. The idea, it's not an idea, it's the truth. All you people are grown. You do what you want. You do what you feel. But just know, today is Sunday, and I actually speak louder than words, at least on this day. Um, and with that note, time for the shout outs. Shout out to Juanita Hooper, Charmaine Skinner, Chris Vasquez. I didn't catch my man at the mall today, but I still remember you. I'm gonna get you one of these days. Anonymous patrons 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, and 63. Supporters or the embodiment of what I'm building this station to be. This work will not decrease. This work will increase rapidly, very rapidly. I am literally 2 days away from making 2 hours a day. After that, 4 hours a day. After that, 8 hours a day. Guaranteed. No, there will be no price increases. This is not a business. This is a truth. Even if it's 8 hours a day, I'm only working. There are only 30 days in a month. So at most, I can only make $30 from any one person. And that's just out of respect for my supporters to say that this is not to get in your pockets. Because when this was nothing, supporters was there. So, I'm not gonna go big business on you and say, you know what? I'm somebody now. Pay me more. We ain't gonna go that way. Also, excuse the if anybody felt like I was pointing them out, don't worry about it. If anybody felt like I was overly biased, my apologies. If anybody felt like I was playing lawmaker or something. No apologies. These discussions are supposed to be like this. I'm not supposed to sound like I'm trying to be on your side nor be on my side. This is objectiveness coming out in its greatest form. I can't hold it back. I can't water it down because that's not objectiveness anymore. So thank you for listening. Enjoy your Sundays and stay happily married.